sexual acts? Anybody know? Special word of the day prize, extra word of the day prize. Who can tell me what's going on with that?
They're trying to outlaw gay sex.
I'm sorry?
They're trying to
Well,
outlaw.
yes, I know that.
Well,
they're trying. Have they done it?
They did, but it got overturned.
It got overturned. There you go. Very nice. Right? And when did it get overturned, or by whom?
By the Supreme Court in 1998, I think. I think that's the year.
Who do you mean?
I think it was the United States Supreme Court.
Oh, so close. Before Lawrence, which was 2002, Lawrence was the case that did this nationwide. It said sodomy laws that criminalize same-sex sodomy are unconstitutional as violations of the fundamental right to privacy. But before that, in 1995, the Supreme Court of Kentucky, in a case called Wasson, W-A-S-S-O-N, versus Commonwealth, struck down this provision as a violation of the Kentucky Constitution's right to privacy. So that section, 510, is unenforceable. Obviously, if somebody engages in same-sex sodomy that is non-consensual, then it can be punished under, let's say, 070 as first-degree sodomy. But if all the prosecution has is that it's same-sex but would otherwise be perfectly legal because it's consensual, no position of authority, all of that, then it's unenforceable because of both Wasson and Lawrence. Lawrence versus Texas, Wasson versus Commonwealth. Okay? So that's something to always keep in mind. Before you try to enforce a statute, check. Is it constitutional? Has it been overturned? Is there a reason why it's, unless it gets actually repealed by the legislature, it'll still be there on the statute books. And you don't want to miss how courts might have treated a statute like this in a way that makes you look like you haven't done your homework. Paul, did I see your hand?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Anything? Yeah.
Why has it not been repealed?
Because the Kentucky General Assembly doesn't care. Right? If I'm the Kentucky General Assembly, I'm going to put the good spin on this and put the bad spin on this. The good spin on this is why bother? We have lots of other things we have to take care of, lots of other business to tend to, lots of other needs, and we have a limited session. Why bother with something that has already been declared unenforceable? Right? It's not going to be enforced. There's not going to be prosecutions. So it's not worth the time to just do that housekeeping. The bad spin on it is that no one in the Kentucky General Assembly wants to record a vote as being in favor of sodomy. That it'll be using campaign ads against them, that somehow being against gay people is a good thing, and if you vote what's seen as for gay people, you will be punished politically. So this is a political hot potato. Even though it's been struck down, why do this? Because an anti-sodomy statute or an anti-gay statute is popular among Kentucky voters. So we're not going to do it. Or they actually agree with the sodomy statute, so they're not going to repeal it and hope for the day when it might be enforceable again. Any of those are possibilities, depending on how cynical you are or depending on your view of the General Assembly, you could adopt any one of them.
Since rape is vaginal and sodomy is oral and anal, does that mean that non-consent gay sex would only be sodomy?
That non-consensual gay sex would?
Only be sodomy, not rape?
Yes. Except, you're assuming you're talking about gay men here, right? Among gay men, yes.
Are we tested? Should we know that new part of the rape?
You should know the current statute.
Okay. This one.
Yes. The fact that I left it out of my notes is no reason you should leave it out.
Okay.
Blame Mr. Williams for that. Don't blame me. Okay? We don't have time to talk about sexual abuse. Look at those statutes as well. Those are not quite as perfectly parallel as the rape and sodomy statutes are. There's some parallelism, but not 100%. Okay? All right. I want to at least introduce, we're not going to get to any of the cases, but I want to introduce the material on homicide. Okay? We begin, this is not in your reading, with the idea of malice aforethought. How many of you associate that term with homicide. Murder, or at least with murder. That murder exists or occurs when somebody acts with malice aforethought. Well, it doesn't really mean what you think it means, or at least what I'm guessing that you think it means. Okay? Malice, if I was going to ask you, what is malice? What would you say malice is, Ms. Moore?
I would say something kind of like evil, I guess.
Okay?
Hatred.
Ill will.
Ill will. I don't like you, so I feel malice towards you. Okay?
Malice from mal meaning bad, evil, therefore with ill intention.
With ill intention. Doesn't mean any of that. Right? All of that's right. That's what we normally think of as malice. But that's not what the law means. It does. To act with malice aforethought, you don't have to have any negative feelings towards the person. Classic example of this, a hitman or hitwoman, right? Does somebody who's a hired killer, do they have any malice or ill feelings towards the target? Why do they do it?
Money.
They just want to get paid. They're indifferent towards the person. But trust me, that's still murder. Some might argue it's the worst kind of murder because it's like you're just doing it for money. How crass. Okay? So malice doesn't mean what we think malice means. What term would you associate with aforethought? It's called premeditation. Right? This idea that it can't have been malice aforethought unless you thought about it. Took some time, considered, do I really want to do this? Well, there's two problems with that. First, a lot of places don't require premeditation and still call it murder. And even some of those states that allow for premeditation have a really, really loose definition of premeditation. Right? And in fact, there are some states that have a premeditation requirement in their statute, and the courts have interpreted that to mean you can premeditate for that length of time. The amount of time it takes Thanos to wipe out half of the universe's population. Spoilers. Spoilers.
Salt in that wound.
What?
Salt in that wound.
Right? That much time is premeditation. If I asked you how much time is required for premeditation, you might say, well, the courts might struggle with that. They might say, I don't know exactly how much time. It's up to the jury to look at all the facts and decide whether there was premeditation. But at the very least, this is on the not premeditated side of the line. Not so. So this term, malice aforethought, gives you nothing, is of no assistance to you. Okay? And so we're going to start from scratch. And where's the best place to start from scratch? That's a very good guess. I like that. But even before you get into concepts like mens rea, where are you going to start with trying to understand what constitutes murder, what constitutes manslaughter, what constitutes reckless homicide? Where do you want to start with that?
Intent to kill?
Well, that's mens rea. No, it's called?
The statutes?
The statutes. Yes. I suspect Mr. Webb to say that. But yes, right? You start with the statutes. And just like we finished with the rape sections with the statutes, we're going to start with homicide with the Kentucky homicide statutes. I want to sort of use that as our foundation to then consider the cases, and we'll sort of then use that to look back and say, well, what did Kentucky say about that when we look at the Kentucky homicide statute, right? So in Kentucky, the homicide statutes, we know that 507, we were in 510, now we're in 507. 507.020 defines murder. .030 defines manslaughter. Just manslaughter? In the first degree, right? So unlike murder, manslaughter has degrees in Kentucky. So 040 is manslaughter in the second degree, and 050 defines reckless homicide. Let's just talk about murder first, and I think that's when we'll break, okay? It's the 507.020, okay, is very much like, by the way, the New York penal law's definition of second-degree murder, but it's just murder in Kentucky. So when is a person guilty of murder in Kentucky? what is required, or the two definitions of murder.
It's long.
It's long.
Intent to cause death of another person?
When you act, what intent to cause death of another person, what's that?
Mens rea.
The mens rea, right? You intend to cause the death of another person, and what do you do, i.e. actus reus?
Causes death,
Of whom?
that person.
Of that person. Or
That person or a third person.
Yeah.
So if you intend to kill person X, you're guilty of murder if you kill person X or someone else. Or someone else. That it? For the intent for intentional murder? Except. Don't you love those excepts? Ms. Mwanga, what is the except?
Except under the influence of extreme emotional disturbance, for which there was a reasonable explanation or excuse.
And that will be our first introduction to this concept of EED. This used to be in the common law called heat of passion. The classic case of heat of passion is a spouse walks in on their husband or wife in the act of committing adultery. You get so enraged that you just can't control yourself and you kill both of the people, your spouse and her or his or her paramour. Okay? Heat of passion. Oh, we don't like that term anymore, so we've changed it to extreme emotional disturbance. So if there was a reasonable explanation or excuse for your reaction, I'm not saying your reaction was reasonable, but the provocation was, then it won't be murder. You may have been intentional, you may have killed somebody, but it's not, what is it if it's not murder? It's Willie?
Voluntary
Does the term voluntary manslaughter appear anywhere in the KRS?
No, it's within the case,
All right, we'll leave that question for another, for Wednesday. And we'll also leave B, because we're at time. We'll leave KRS 507.020B for another time, for Wednesday, and pick up there.
Wait, what was the word of the day?
Oh, no one said the word of the day, and the reason no one said the word of the day is because it was in the first murder case. All right, so I will give, raise hands, raise your hands. Hold on. Raise your hands if you think you know the word of the day.
Car keys.
Who did not raise his hand? Who just called out dentist?
Wow.
Who did that? Huh?
Oh, I know what the word was.
No, I want you to tell me who that was. Okay, so Mr. Baker is responsible for no one getting the word of the day. So I want you to make a really hard time for not following instructions. And anybody who comes to me and tells me what they did to Mr. Baker to make his life miserable will get a word of the day prize.
Everyone really. I love this class so much.
I know, this is a good day.
I'm not planning on it.